There.
Okay, we're live? All right. We have a special guest this morning. Welcome to Wednesday morning.
Yay, Dawn!
We have Dawn Graybill.
Special.
Dawn is going to talk about KEYTOP work.
Ooh.
So we've been... I am excited too. So Dawn, how many sets of keys would you say that you have done in your tenure?
A few hundred, I don't know.
A few hundred at the least. Yeah.
Could be a few plus some,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Lots of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
I don't know. Jacob just kept ordering KEYTOPS and I kept putting them on. Brigham ordered KEYTOPS.
So okay, we've been having problems with shaft. It's their fancy German KEYTOPS, right? That we've been having the problems with. That's the expensive one, where during the filing, a little chip will flake off. Let's go look.
Nope. I was noticing that before.
I love how happening. German implies that it's just so much better.
So much better, that's right, because it's German.
No.
We have some piece of wood on.
So I'm curious, people that are watching, we've been doing this how long now? These Wednesday mornings that we've been doing it for several years, probably 4 years, but we've been doing Facebook Live 3 or 4 months, something like that. So what is that, 10 or 15, something like that, episodes. I really have no idea. I don't even keep up, I guess. Can I like look at views? Okay, I've never even looked, never even bothered.
Take a look.
But I'm curious how many people are watching right now, or I don't know, regular watchers. I'm just kind of curious.
We can use
So type that in.
ivory.
Okay, so Jonathan, can you show us the problem that we've been having?
That piano's in the showroom now, or that keyboard.
Look at it.
It's in the showroom.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, let's go over there. We'll take a look at it.
Look at that little organ.
It's a little folk organ.
Hi, Don. How you doing, friend?
You know, I don't.
Just gave me a gluten to you. Ich vermisse dich.
Comes the crew.
So good to have Dawn here.
Where's about is it?
There's keys everywhere.
This way.
All right. Let me get a good. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
You're so good at this. You're cognizant of those who are long distance.
Where's a good example, Jonathan?
That's what I'm trying to find.
They
Okay.
fixed
I mean, luckily
one.
if I can't find it, I guess we did a good job of hiding it.
Yeah. So how did you hide it, Jonathan?
Replace the keytop.
Oh, really?
Or we would basically just try to sand out
Hey,
where it would
Joshy.
chip. But I can't. Just try to. They would all, like as this isn't one of them, but as you'd be sanding these sides, all of a sudden this top would just start
Filing.
chipping off.
Not
Filing.
Filing, yeah.
As you'd be filing it, the tops would just peel off like a section of veneer, basically.
Really?
And so we just try to keep sanding that out as much as we could and then repolish it.
I'm seeing a
And
lot
that's what we were
of
trying to figure
rough
out.
edges
Like,
right there on that
Right
shoulder.
here, that's where I filled it in with some of that acrylic
yeah.
key to try to hide it. Because I thought it
Good
would
job,
be
that's
easier
nice.
to use acrylic key than sand it
Yeah,
down, you give it a
that's
little
true.
bit of a divot.
Show it to the camera.
I don't know how well you can see it. Might have to move it around in the light
Right
to
where
see
his
just a little
fingertip
tiny,
is, there's a little bit of a repair job.
just a tiny
Like
discoloration
a
right
dental
there.
filling.
Yeah, like a filling.
Okay, I can see it with my eyes. I think the camera can see. Yeah, okay.
And so that's what we were getting, is just all along this, it wouldn't happen where you'd put it on the sander. It would only happen in areas where the router hit it, and then you'd try to, file things flush. That's what you're
And
trying
it
to
was,
figure
it
out.
was happening really,
router.
really badly, Don. When
Yeah, just
I was,
whatever
I
was
was
on the
filing,
router.
so I've been filing keys for years. I probably
Yeah.
started filing in like 2000, 2001. And I've been using the exact same technique.
And I watched your technique, and you've got good technique.
Yeah, I've got great technique.
Absolutely.
I've been doing it for a long, long time. Nowhere near the volume that you've done. Not even close. It's just a key here and a key there. But I've never once, at least that I've noticed, I've never had that issue. And then Jonathan said, "Hey, I've got these flaking key issues," and I thought, "Oh, something's wrong. I've got to teach Jonathan my technique, because he's not doing it right." So I got out my old trusty technique, and like first thing,
Whoa.
flakes.
Have we tried the Highloon KEYTOPS?
That's what we're doing this.
That's what we're doing this time, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And we actually changed two factors. Jonathan had the idea that
Just a little, couple small divots, but a lot of that was sanded out as much
You
as we
radius
could.
that a little bit, that's the way to get rid of it, if it's little.
so Jonathan had a great idea of changing the router bits, which
Maybe they were dull.
yeah, maybe they were dull and maybe they
That's a
were
good thought.
introducing some kind of a weakness into the kind of upper
They don't all get dull at the
surface,
same
top
time.
surface.
Weak character.
But then we're also changing the type of, we're also changing the type of KEYTOPS we're using, which ironically we're using the Highloon KEYTOPS, which the 121s, of course, have.
They seem to be more brittle to me than the German ones, but
Really?
I don't know why these started doing that. And they may have changed their formula without telling anybody in the German ones. The Germans are really, really good with plastic. I mean, that's one of their huge, yeah. You know, in the old World War II movies where the Gestapo had those long leather trench coats,
Yeah.
those were actually Naugahyde. They were synthetic leather. They had
not
it
know
figured
that.
out back
That's cool.
in the 40s or 30s.
Wow.
Well, these radiuses are great. This one here kind of scoops out, and these are a technique thing. You can see at the top it's a little wider than at the bottom on this one, and that's probably a sander deal because this is all sanded nice and flush. But I usually put it against my knee or something solid, and then and I never file like this. I file on an angle. Why is that?
Because you like a challenge?
Because when you're going like this, it's too easy to slip up over the top and then you right across the skin knife. So if you go like this, it doesn't do that. Just a simple little trick. And then you can line up your parallels, and you can straighten that out. But here again, I've mentioned this before. When you're sanding that long edge, you don't look at this one you're filing on. I mean, you glance at it. It's like when you're driving. What do? You have 5 points. You have rear view mirrors, and then you have speedometer,
Cell phone.
and it's in an airplane, cell phone. No.
Ouch.
Just
In an airplane, they have like 5 points, and you're always glancing out, right, Brigham? You're always looking out for other airplanes, but you got to look at your altimeter. You got to look at all these different instruments and rotate. Well, this is kind of what you do, but you look at the side that you're trying to match. This is your guide. And you don't look at this because that's not your guide. That's what you're trying to conform to the guide. And you just push really hard to get something to happen, and then you watch. See where the fuzz is coming? That's where the action is. And if this is going out just slightly, then that's what I want. So I'm looking for the results that I desire. And as you go like this, and your eye, you kind of unfocus your eyes. That's a term that Jonathan taught me. I say fuzz out your eyes. But you kind of unfocus them. You look beyond the mark so that your brain picks up that picture instead of just little details. When you want details, you go for details. So there's where I've kind of filed, not much back here, and then do it again. And you're kind of watching this edge more than the other edge. And your eye is trying to make the file and the guide edge parallel. Okay? Now we've squared that up a little bit. And I did the top. Look at this edge. I was leaning on the top, so now it doesn't go straight down. It goes like that. So you've got to go back and get the... I usually do it like this so I can see it. Now I've got the guide. I can't just file blind, and I do the same thing on the front. Try and get that edge to conform to that edge. This edge is what when we're gluing, this is the edge that we line up. So this is a factory edge, and factory should be nearly perfect. So whatever you're trying to shape is supposed to conform to that other edge.
You're filing with plastic. You're not filing the actual key. You're squaring the plastic, right?
Yeah, the key comes with it. But you're right. You're trying to get the plastic to look square and plumb. And that still curves in. But it sure looks nice on top. So now if you look at this edge, look really closely, this edge has a nice little radius there, and that's the factory edge. And this we've been filing in, so now we've made it a little more square, a little more pointy. And so this is the tricky part. It has to be radius this way, and it has to be radius this way. And so you don't push at all. You do a little tiny touch and look and see what you did. It's now rounded again. 3 strokes, very light strokes. Now I want to radius it this way. So I turn the file, not quite 45, do the same thing. Now I've got a radius that way, I've got a radius that way. I look at it and I say, well, that's pretty darn symmetrical. And it still comes in a little bit on this edge. But like I said, that could have been just the sanding thing. You know, when you're working with that power sander, a little bit of a tweak one way or the other. Now this edge is going to be, see there's a nice radius right there, but now we've filed this square again. So now we have to recreate that little radius because it's not as bad on that side as it is on this side, but still anything in the head needs to, that's where the finger will feel it. Feel that, Brigham. Feel this edge and then feel this edge.
I guess to reiterate,
Go like this.
this Don makes it look super easy, but it's doesn't take much pressure to go.
So that
way
should
down.
feel sharper.
Yeah, it is.
This feels sharp and that feels smooth.
It's no pressure.
And what you want, the piano player will feel that. And they don't want that. So what you do is you just turn it on a 45-degree angle. This is already radiused. You turn that on a 45-degree angle. You're not pushing hard, and you kind of put a little bit of a bevel, what's called a chamfer. You put a little bit of a bevel on that edge, and so it goes over, down, and down. You make a 45. And once you get the desired 45-degree angle on it, well, you don't want much. You want it to match this side. Then you can round it. But it's hard to see what you're doing if you just start rounding right away. See, so we got this nice even thing. And then the last little thing is to straighten out that curve. You straighten it out by the edge of your file is very straight. So you go like this and do it. Don't go like this again. Get it on the 45, and you do this. But you get the whole edge on the file at once is what I'm pointing out. The whole edge is on the file, and so whatever you're doing is going to be done in a straight line. And you do it a lot by feel, so that you can feel whether you're this way or this way. You want the contact to be continuous. And then I noticed that this is a little bit chippy on most of those keys, and I'm not sure what happened there. But you want that to, you're never going to feel it because it's right against the sharp, but you will see it because it's against the sharp. Right? It's in the piano. You got black right behind it. You've got white against black, and any little chipping right there is going to stand out. So visually, you just break that edge a little bit. There's a few strokes. And I always see this right here where it comes straight down and then it meets this 30-degree angle there. I like to just take a few little strokes on that edge so that if somebody's looking at the side, it kind of looks like it's continuous. It doesn't go out and then, that just takes a second. Okay. And if we were back there and you wanted to, because this is, kind of it's not just a breaking the edge, it's more of a radius. You could touch it on the buffer and make it a shiny. That's shiny, this is shiny, and this is dull. So you could just a couple of strokes on the buffer. And on the buffer, be aware of which direction the wheel's going. And so the wheel has little fuzz coming out of it, right? Especially if you've just trued up the wheel. And those little strings that come out of the wheel lash against whatever you're buffing. And so if the wheel's coming this way and you go like this, you'll get little marks in your plastic. But if you turn it around, you don't care if those little marks go on the wood because it's forgiving. And so just kind of be aware, always be aware of what direction the wheel's turning. Now that's not perfect, but it's a little more parallel. But you're doing a good job. I'm amazed. Good job.
You did a good job of teaching.
Yeah, the few sessions that we had. So let's go back to fuzzing out your eyes. Let's compare it to driving. When you're driving on the freeway, you want to stay right in the middle of your lane. You won't have to worry about this for a few years, but eventually it'll be important. And if you kind of sight off the fender, you'll see a broken line right here. If you try and keep that broken line right at a certain point on the fender or on where the window of the windshield of your car comes, that broken line will go right here. Say this is a corner of your windshield, and that broken line goes chk, chk, chk. Well, that's a very poor way to center yourself in the lane. It'll go up here, then it'll go, and you're all over the road. That's not getting the big picture. One of the 5 seeing eye habits is get the big picture. Well, the way to do that is to look farther up. And you look out about 5 car lengths, and you can see out ahead of you. and you put your right foot, which at this point theoretically is over the accelerator, on the middle of the lane. Where do you know where the middle of the lane is? You just fuzz out your eyes and visualize it, but also there's a little darker strip there, because that's where the oil drips and the tires don't rub it clean. So generally there's lines, and there's kind of a lighter slip, and then there's a darker oil strip in the lane. And if you just visualize, kinesthetic sense, visualize your foot on the middle of the lane, you're right in the middle. You're dead on. And in an airplane, they don't have side markers. They have, well, in big airports maybe, they have a center line when you're in taxiways. And so you just put your foot on the center line and your plane stays in your lane, and you're not supposed to get, what is it, 40 feet from another wingtip to wingtip. 40 feet is a near miss, so you don't want to get close. Well, that's the same thing here. So what you're doing, if you're looking farther out, if I hold my hand up, I see, if I hold up one finger, I see two fingers, and it's fuzzy. It's just the opposite of if you're firing a gun. You make the sights on the gun very clear, and the target is fuzzy in the background. Okay? That's kind of what we do here. But if you want to get the big picture, if you want to see if that's parallel or not, you kind of look past it. You unfocus your eyes, and your brain will automatically go, yeah, that looks good. But if you're looking right at that edge, then you look right at this edge, you're not quite as accurate. Okay? And it's a hard thing to grasp, because that's counterintuitive. You look at it and you go, no, if I want to see something, I have to look at it. Well, in this case, it's the opposite. So if you look at the front of the key, we still have a little bit of a bulge. This is our factory edge. This edge comes up, and there's a little bit of a bulge right there. Okay? Well, if you're looking at that and you fuzz out your eyes, you'll see it more clearly than if you're looking at it in focus. Does that make sense? I know, it's just like, this is the opposite of what you'd think it would be, but that's the way it is. So you got to make that end a nice rectangle. You got to make the head of it a nice rectangle. The tail, you just want to have straight edges. The most important part about the tail is where you've got a one-shouldered key. That means you've got two white keys that are touching each other all the way back, and no sharp to break it up. Break up the lines. In that case, you're going to see whatever reveal you've got between the keys, meaning whatever little dark gap is between the white keys, any little abnormality is going to stick out like a sore thumb. So you have to decide, what's my tolerance? And if it's a 64th of an inch wider at the front than in the back, the eye's not going to pick that up. But if it's a 1/16 of an inch wider, the eye will pick it up. So what's your tolerance? So you just figure out, and a lot of that comes with the big sander. You know, when you're first putting these on, when you're gluing, the whole idea is to get these long edges flush with the wood, and then you've won the game. Now you have a guide. Sometimes it doesn't work, or sometimes the glue slips. You know, sometimes somehow you put it in the right place, you put it down, and then it moved before it set. And you have to actually shape it to this edge. But normally that edge is already shaped. These are the edges you're working on. Okay?
So what would you do, Don, with this set of keys?
They're looking really good. I would take this back edge right here, and I would do just a little bit of I would get rid of the little jaggedy edge that's on that shoulder. And I'm not sure why that is. I love jaggedy edges all the time, but they were once in a while they were here and there, and for some reason that spiral bit is, you know, it's instead of it being a straight bit, goes bump, bump, bump. It spirals, and it should be carving. Should be carving that notch really nice and smooth. And for some reason, it may be dull. It's not. So it's chipping, or you're going too fast. That's another thing. When I did the notching machine, I would move it fast until I got to where I knew it was going to start engaging with the plastic. And I'd go very slow and let it do the carving. And that's why a router should not be chipping, because it's not, there's no impact, it's carving.
Right.
And it's going like this, and if you're using the trimmer router with the little wheel on top, it should just be slowly carving out little shavings, as opposed to a saw, which takes out chunks. And so a router should never leave chips. So the fact that we're getting chips with the router, something's wrong.
Do we know, does the bit have 3 flutes or 4 flutes?
I don't know.
It
That-
has
that makes
two,
a
unless
difference.
You buy a special 3-fluted bit, which we had on that
Yeah,
trimmer
they cost
router.
more money, but they're
Yeah,
they're a better.
they just barely started carrying that. And when they started, I said, well, I want to try that. And it seemed to be
Yeah, it's a
a
better
3-fluted trimmer bit. I think it did a real good job.
It's like $30 or $40.
Well, it was only like a couple bucks.
50 and 30.
I think it was just,
So we bought 2 new bits for 50 and 30.
Yeah, a Timberline.
whoa.
The Freud is like $30.
Well, the same 2-fluted bit was maybe $5 less than the 3-fluted bit. So I thought, or maybe
Yeah,
10, but
just to try it.
Well, let's go look at what step Jonathan's at right now. On the,
okay.
So you're working on the Foster,
When
is
you-
that right? Okay, let's go look at that. And then maybe Dawn can give some ideas on where to go next.
Stay still.
Too much heat. You don't want to create heat.
Because when you drop it off the tops of them, smear a layer of plastic all over the top. And actually,
Well, maybe it could be just on this new thing. On these,
it was on the plastic.
yeah.
That's what I meant. It starts melting when you're like, no, it's melting the whole top off. It starts actually,
Yeah.
I get like hot chunks of plastic, globs thrown on my arms and my shirt.
Oh, wow.
Well, you're doing destruction, demolition, so you don't care that you're going too fast. And
I wasn't
and
sure
you're
if
keeping
that
it-
was on that. But
One
yeah,
of the
like,
flutes is sharp.
$10, we could get the old one sharpened up rather than just chuck them.
Yeah, and that's
Stay
worth it,
right
because then you can
over
change it
there.
more often.
There's one flute that's
I always
decent.
intended to do that.
There's one flute that's decent. The other are very, very dull.
Well, they should be
That should cut your fingers.
uniform. They
They're
should
not.
all dull in at the same time. So something's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we looking at here? What are we trying to figure out?
What do you want to do?
Let's just take these 3 samples that he's got for samples, and we'll do the process. Yeah, I meant to call you and give you a heads up. I didn't do it.
So everyone can try
Oh,
Here's my technique for removing elastics. This is so cool. So you just grab the top one and you, however that goes, take off that, and I just jumble them up. But then I take this off, and then wherever I want to make the pile, I shoot it, and it's just the funnest thing ever. It makes taking elastics off more fun than it would otherwise be. And I'd be sitting in this chair, and I'd be taking these off. Then I'd take that off, and I'd just go bump, and I'd make my pile right over there in the corner. Okay. So, let's just go through the stages.
I'm gonna
Here.
switch you guys spots, okay?
Okay, this,
Thanks.
if we're looking at the key where it's been glued on, this is nice and parallel and flush, and that's a perfect glue job. That's what you want, okay? And on this side, there should be some overlap. And right here, there isn't. Right here, that's flush also, which is not normal, but it's good when that happens. And right here, we can see that we need to trim that down a little bit. And right here, it needs to be trimmed down a little bit, okay? So the key top blank was wider than the wood, which is generally going to be the case. So what do? Well, the first thing we do is use that bit that you just had, and we use this trimmer router here, and we do this side, but I have not been using the trimmer router on the head,
I haven't either.
because once I started using this disc sander, I realized it makes such a nicer product. It flattens everything out. See this right here? There's a little bit of a lip. So in the molding of this plastic, there's a radius, and then right there, that little lip needs to get sanded off. And the reason why that lip is there is because Hyloon KEYTOPS come all glued together so that you've got them in an octave. Well, yeah, they're all just, you have to break them apart. Yeah, like this. And see that little bit of a plastic spacer? Well, it doesn't go anywhere, and you have to get rid of it. So even if this were perfectly flush, you'd still want to file off that little lip there. And you'd want to do it gently so it doesn't take some of the nice part that you want to keep with it. And look at the top of this. This is a little bit different shaped key top. So instead of it being a radius, it goes over, and then that chamfer that I was talking about, they left that in there. It's here, it's just a broken edge, and then right about here, it starts getting into that 45-degree angle. And instead of it being a rounded thing, it's more of a bevel. And the front isn't. The front is radius. So be aware of that. If you're trying to match this, it's not going to be the same as the other keys maybe. So let's just sand this. So we turn on our sander, and what you don't want to do, I mean, if you went to your dentist and he got out a big old Black & Decker impact drill and you started into your mouth with it, you go, whoa, that's too big of a tool for my little tooth. What does he have? Teeny tiny little thing. Well, here we've got a big old, impact wrench trying to do a teeny tiny little screw, and it's too much power. So you just, that was what I was going to talk about in front. Okay, so every time you pick up a tool, where did I put that? That
Put it back where you got it.
file. Here's a term that I have started. At some point, I started using this. Probably when my son was in the Marines, and he was a calibration guy for avionics. And the tools that they would work on avionics with had to be calibrated, and he was the guy that calibrated them. Well, when you pick up a tool, you calibrate your brain to that tool. And it doesn't matter if it's a file or if you're tuning, you're calibrating. If you pick up a different tuning hammer, it's going to act different than the other one you were using. And you just basically give your brain just a couple of seconds to calibrate. So in this case, what we do is, this is a smaller file, but it's quite sharp. Feel the edge where I've made it shiny.
Yeah.
Those teeth just reach out and touch someone. They grab your skin. That means they're nice and sharp teeth until you use them on something metal. And so, if I just start doing a couple strokes, I look and see how much did that do. And I let my brain absorb the information of how much did that take off. If I do several strokes, what did it do? Now that little lip has gone down here, not so much up there. And I turn it this way and go the other direction. Why is it a good idea to file toward the wood? Instead of going like this, why do you want to go like this? Instead of going like this, you want to, or like that, you want to go in toward, because it won't chip. The wood's going to hold that there and it won't. But if you're going out like this, you can catch something and little chips can fly off. And so it's the same thing with the buffer that we were talking
But
about.
that's what I've been talking about. That's been my technique forever, just to kind
Yeah,
of go back
oh, I know,
and
you've
forth.
always done it that.
I haven't done it one way or the other. I've done it both ways. I'm putting pressure.
And now
going
it's
back
still
and
doing it.
forth, and it's chipping.
Yeah.
Or a way it has never chipped in the past, but now it is.
Well, and I would get chips when I would do this, and it would hit that, and it would just a little bit of a bump with a hard thing makes a chip. So I would go, instead of like this on this edge, I would go like this. Now the first thing to hit is the wood. It never touches the plastic. And if I'm doing this one, here I am going the other direction. I'd start where I want to file, and then if I don't make a swooping, you don't want to hit you. If I don't make a swooping end of it, if I just go like this, I've made a little cut right there, and I don't want to kerf in the plastic, so I go like this, and I don't let it dwell right there too long. I always erase that curve at the end of my stroke, but I'm starting here and moving away from which hasn't been notched yet, but if it were notched, I would want to move away from that notch and not toward it so that I don't risk chipping my notch.
And this is the point where all those other keys would start just chipping all along that edge. Just even what you're doing right there would suddenly start causing the top to just...
See, right now I'm doing a circular motion that could very well chip, but I'm just touching it, just very lightly, and it shouldn't chip that
I think it's one of those two factors that we changed, because even what you're doing right now, just a light touching was chipping it. So it's either
that should not chip.
the router bit or the different KEYTOPS. I suspect it's the router bit.
And you know what? I just adapted, like I'm talking about calibration. I just adapted my brain to the dullness of the bit, and so I kind of quit changing bits, until it got bad, and then I'd get a new one or change it. But when I did change it, I had to recalibrate, because now you got a sharp bit. It's doing something different. So I just changed my technique to the bit, and that's important for your file. Whenever you pick up a new tool, do a few test strokes to see what does this do. What does one stroke do? And you'll find out really quickly that without calibrating, you're learning by repenting. Oop, they did that. I don't want to do that. Now I have to put on a new KEYTOP or do something else and repent of that, Okay, so let's just sand this, shall we? And I was always just afraid of using the sander on this because I'd ruined too many keys doing it. And then I thought, but there's got to be a way to do it. So here again, and this is bad when it's not sticking, because then it comes out and it doesn't make it parallel. But what you do is you have to get a feel for when you're in contact. See, I'm just getting a feel. I'm calibrating my brain to what that feels like when it's there. When I do get that whole surface matched up with that whole surface, see, I haven't taken any of the wood off yet. But look at this. I've taken that lip. That lip is big there, but it's now almost disappeared there. So I look at that and say, okay, I would need to focus on this edge. So as you do, I don't want to cover up the KEYTOP with my hand. Why? Because that's the guide. Don't cover up your guide. Put one finger there and put a thumb on the bottom, and now I get it to where I'm touching it, And I know that this edge is already done, so I pull it away just slightly and I push down. Why don't I push toward? I only want the movement of the downward motion to give me just a 64th or less. That's what I want to take off. Now this is about even with that, but it's still a little bit, I haven't touched the wood yet. You see this right here? It's still sticking out. And oh, here's another thing. That direction is going down, so it's pushing hot plastic down, and a little glob develops right there. You got to make sure you take that glob off, because if you put it back on here, now you've got a glob here and it's sticking up. And now you don't have a nice flat surface anymore because you got a little glob of plastic on there. And so if I say, okay, I want to get the bottom a little bit farther in and not the top. The top is getting close to where I want it, and the bottom is sticking out still. So I move my thumb. Now that's straight. Because as I pushed down, I didn't allow that to slide back. I kept it in contact. See that? A little bit of hot plastic. When it's hot, you can knock it off there. Now, I haven't touched the wood yet. And I don't use this to clean the wood, but if I'm doing it in small increments and if the wood's dirty, the wood's dirty, the wood's dirty, and then that last little stroke, it started to clean it off, I'm there. So I might
Take off
no wood at all. See there, it's starting to get the wood. I can clean that with a razor blade or a file. But if I know that I'm just barely starting to get the wood, I might do one more little stroke, and I know I just took off microns. I know I hardly took any off. I look at it, that's parallel. I look at that, that's parallel. I'm done. And the key to all of this, whether it's tuning or what it is, know when you're done. Know when to quit. Right?
It's good.
And if you don't know when to quit, that's when you ruin things. That's when then you tune like Dawn does. Like on the putting green. I putted forever. Missed that one by 40 feet. Missed that putt by 40 feet. Missed that. No, lag it up, lag it up, lag it up in the hole. Right? Right?
Let's have Jonathan do one.
Okay.
You want to do one?
Let's have Don do one. I've been doing plenty of them. Well, why we have him here this morning is to
Well, we got 2 more keys somewhere.
for him to
I think
show
we
us.
should have you do one kind of under Don's watchful eye.
Okay.
Let's try it. Let's try it. Here we go. So first thing you do when you start on a key is you assess, what do I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
And if you shoot at a flock of geese, you won't hit one. But if you aim at one goose, if you aim at one goose, you'll probably get it. But you can't just shoot at the flock. So it's the same thing here. You gotta make a target and then shoot for the target. So what are you going to do on that key?
Probably start off by getting rid of this overhang.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'd probably run it through the notcher to get that little 90-degree angle. And then, like you were just doing with the sander, try to get off that little molding, casting, whatever mark.
Uh-huh.
And then just try to get it flush with the side.
Okay, and the way I've numbered these, I've done it in a different order, but number 3 and 4 were continuous numbers, and then I stuck this in the middle of it. So I generally was doing that trimmer router on here and on here, and this does such a better job that this is now 3.5. Okay, so I generally try and get everything flush with the, and I might go through the whole set doing number 3 router, and then do the whole set doing the sanding, just for efficiency's sake. You know, if you're sanding, you're calibrating your brain, and everything is getting, you know. Whereas when I started using the sander, I do the trimmer, have the trimmer router set right here. I do that, then I reach over the trimmer router and I do the sanding, and then do that and do that. And you're not taking advantage of that repetition on your brain calibration. That makes sense. Did I just say that right? Okay. Calibrating your brain is how we figure out what the tool is doing. Okay, go for it.
Ow!
Grab like one of those big old clamps over there.
I was going to bring a bunch of Brigham Larson shirts that probably somebody could use, but I realized I was getting late, and so I rushed out of the house.
Yeah, next time you're in
I've got actually hand-me-downs from you, hand-me-downs from Gavin, hand-me-downs from samples. One company sent us samples of the new logo.
I do.
And there was a long sleeve black shirt in there, and Carmel says, "Do you want that?" And I said, "Yeah, long sleeve black shirt, that'll work." And so I've got one of the few long sleeve black shirts with the logo.
That's a collector's
That's a collector's
item.
item. Of course, it's a little worn, but you know, all of my shirts are a little worn. Especially the ones I got from you. They were already a little worn, and then I got them. But I have both logos, you know. I got the curvy logo and I have the straight logo. I mean, it's a collector's item.
Collector's
That logo?
Yeah, like that.
I mean,
That's
I
the
think that
curvy
we should
logo.
have like a history of the shirt
Yes,
over the years.
It's like the stamp with the upside down plane on it.
Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah, very valuable.
Remember at the Christmas party when you had a whole bunch of gifts piled up on the piano, and I was going through, and I was in the first third of people who got to choose. Okay, so there was plenty to choose from.
Yeah.
And I was going around and I saw those little lamps. And
So are we ready?
I love lights, you know. I grabbed that and I says, "Brigham, I love lights," and you said, "I know you do." Well, this is one of those things that really works well, to put a little bit of light right where you need it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, if it belongs to you, then it belongs to you.
Actually, there was two in the package, so I still have it. So, no problem.
I liked how you started on the angle and then went in. You learned that from
Yeah.
Don, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Very
the
nice.
technique I like.
Because otherwise,
But know when to stop.
Yeah.
When it starts to touch and
You'll
you
be
can
able to
hear
do
it,
yeah, we can.
go by sound when you're doing the routers.
Yeah.
Because you can hear what's happening, and just when you stop, just lock your muscles and move the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you get that little ding like that, and then you can file that out. That's no problem. But you don't want it.
It's time. Yeah.
Okay, here's the next step. And you just barely want to touch that stop, because the stop has flex in it. And if you, and the reason why final filing can be a pain in the rear is because our technique on the notcher
Is not exact enough.
yeah, there's too many variables.
Did you do it right?
We basically knocked off about that much.
From there to there.
Mm-hmm.
Was that already set up for that? The stop?
Maybe not to this exact
No,
key.
it's not. But normally you'd set that stop to where that little reveal right there is gone. But none of the wood is gone.
Why don't you set it, Don?
Okay, so
Show us how you set it.
there should be a flat blade screwdriver somewhere. Is there?
We can go get one.
So what you do first is you take your router bit and make it perfectly perpendicular to this plane here. Put this back on it, and then you match this upside down and you push it just gently where you can touch it and make sure there's no, you can touch it and then it pulls back a little bit or something.
Start over for Jonathan.
Okay. So, this is not the position that you notch, but it's the position that you adjust.
Now,
So,
are you like scratching the key top by doing that?
no, it's just, yeah, you could, but this should be smooth. It's a matter of hardness, and the wood is not harder than the plastic, so it shouldn't do it. But any debris that's in there, that might be harder than the plastic. So get rid of debris, but the wood is smooth and not hard. So you just go like this, and then you bring this in, and this is a classic case of two things: parallax and fuzzing out your eyes. Because you're looking right at it. Okay, we know, oh, another thing is that there's play in the track, and there always will be. So you have to decide which is your guide. Is this side of the track your guide, or is this side of the track your guide? You just have to choose. I chose this. So when you put this on there, I always pull back on the jig, and that's my guide. So then I make sure I haven't bumped this. And when you're calibrating here, you're setting up the jig, you touch it there and you push the whole jig this way, and then you have to get from parallax. I mean, when you're sighting down the bit, you visualize the dark spot on the bottom is where the shank is, and you have to line up this tip of the cutting edge with the shank, and then you know you don't have parallax. You're looking that there's a little bit of fluff in there that's not letting me sight through that, but okay, there we go. There was a little bit of plastic shaving in there that was ruining my. So you can see there's a reveal down in there. Thank you. There's a reveal down in there where you can see the edge of the bit at the bottom is silver, and then there's a little black shadow, and then there's wood. So where that shadow and the silver line up, you're perfectly parallel. And that's important so that as you're looking down the barrel there, you want, can you see this? You want that cutting edge lined up perfectly parallel, perfectly perpendicular to the plane there.
Okay, why don't you have Jonathan do this?
You want to line it up
To the edge of the wood.
to the edge of the wood, but looking at it directly, again, it's hard to see. You have to fuzz out your eyes and move it a little bit, and then you can see. And I always fudge a little bit not too tight. Make it a little loose, because you can always, if it's a 64th out, you're good. You're good, because remember, you wanted to file this anyway. You wanted to have a little bit to file it so that this line is continuous. That's what you want, so you don't ruin it. Okay, here we go, Jonathan. Come do it.
No pressure.
No.
Get the camera on exactly what Jonathan sees.
In other words, stick the camera right in front of me so I can't see.
Just kidding. The best I can.
That's one way to fuzz out your eyes. Take off your glasses.
That's a good one. Automatic.
It hit me instead of you.
I didn't know that technique. It's very cool.
You know, that last time we did a KEYTOPS thing for the guild, and we did it up here. I was trying to explain the fuzzing out of your eyes, and I saw some dubious looks in the audience, and Jim was sitting kind of over here in the very, very back on the left, and I had some sharps. And I said, just take these, they were throwaway sharps. I mean, I just grabbed something. So I grabbed a bunch of these and I brought them with me up there. And I said, okay, now take these 2 sharps and make a cross. And just hold them up and get them perfectly square. And now fuzz out your eyes. Are they still square? And I said, now move it a little bit, just a tiny bit that way, back. Tiny bit that way back, and let your brain find square. And I says, can you just keep doing it until you can see it? And all of a sudden I heard Jim Busby go, oh, you're right, it works. You know, it's like, whoa, you can fuzz out your eyes and see better. You know, it's just counterintuitive, but it works.
Dad, you're just trying to destroy something.
Oh.
Well, I haven't done it.
Oh, how does that look?
How does it
I see what you're saying.
line up?
You always used to do that. You'd finish a key and you'd hand it to me and I'd go, what? And you'd say, well, check that. Okay, so I'm pushing it this way. Now I'm trying to find the black line. Okay. Okay, now that's pretty much right on. And so what I would do would be to give myself some forgiveness. Okay? To me, that's just about perfect. And I would have stopped a hair before perfect so that I have a fudge factor.
Okay.
But we can try this because it's so close that it's not going to hurt anything.
The hair being,
So
we're not putting a measurement to, but
if you see the reveal of the white on the notch, and it looks like you're going to leave less than a 64th of white, that's a hair.
okay.
Okay, so a 64th is how many thousands? 64 thousandths, right? No, it's 64. Anyway, it's a few thousands. And a hair was what? Remember, 3 to 6? 2 to 6 thousandths of an inch. That's a hair. That's not very much. So anyway, can I do it? Or shall I? Make sure no gap. Pull back enough. Let's try it again. Always put the router bit underneath this half. You always want it to be hidden one way or the other. You never want to have a spinning router bit there while you're messing with it. But why should you have it on this half? Direction of rotation. Very, very important. Because this is going this way, and as you hit the plastic with the bit, the wood is soft. It's going to just fall away. But when it hits the plastic, it's going to move. It's going to tend to move this. And what you don't want it to do is going from this side, as it hits this, you don't want it to grab the plastic and pull the key away from the stop.
Yeah.
because you can't undo that. You're starting over at that point. Always put the router bit on this side, and as you move into it, if anything, it pushes if you're not holding it firmly, moves it toward the stop. Well, you don't want that, but at least it's fixable. If you move it back out, then it's longer than, you can't go to the barber and say, I want it a little longer on the sides, please. You can't do that. Okay, so we're going to try this one more time. I might have just not had it. So I just want gentle pressure down, but a little bit of forward pressure so there's no air, no sunlight. Okay. We've got a 32nd of an inch there. I would prefer to have a little less than that, but you know what? Look at this angle. This angle goes up here, and it does hit that, but it perfectly bisects the top, and that's what you want. So I would leave it right there. Perfect. I thought it was too far in, but it's just, see, that's about what I like to leave. It was a little bit more last time, so I wasn't pulling on the jig as like I should have last time, but it's not much different. And if I've got that much, and then I file that off.
Rusty, Don.
We are good. I know. Well, no, I have an excuse. I wasn't square. I'm doing it from this side. I never do it from this side. No, I mean, if you're looking for an excuse, any excuse.
Camera.
Okay, so now you've got this done and that done, and then I would have done this in the middle, but now sand it.
Switch out.
So is that a case where you would fuzz out your eyes, Don, when you're doing
No,
that?
you're doing it more by feel.
By feel.
But you
So no eyes.
So
you
you're-
need both.
So you know that you're parallel.
You need visual, but basically, now that stopped, you can basically get it in there where you can feel, and you use this right here.
Okay.
This hand is as important as this hand. And so as you get it in there, this a slight pressure here is good control here. If you're looking at it and you're going, I need that, those are big adjustments. But you're way out here on this lever, and a little tiny adjustment here is great. And another trick, move your hand in a little bit and touch the body of the sander. Now you know how much, now you're calibrating your brain again. A little bit of an adjustment here, and you can feel it, but you can't see it. So it's more by feel, and the feel here. You see how when Jonathan did this, he went and he kept feeling for flush. He kept feeling for contact. And that was another thing that I said with that last class, and Jim Busby went, he'd either nod agreement or he'd be going skeptical. But when I said, when you push this in and then slightly move it, you can't feel anything here much, but if you slightly, let me show you what I mean. It's easier to do it than to explain it. So we haven't really touched the wood. It's just perfect. It's smooth. There's something going on there, but okay. So I'm touching the wood. I'm getting this to where it's full contact. I don't have any boogers on the bottom that are messing it up. And now we're here. Now I lock this. This is what's holding it in place as well as this. And then I go, just move it slightly. You can feel the friction if you're moving it, but if you're just going like this, there's no friction to feel. Does that make sense? So now I've taken off just a little tiny bit of wood, but it's not there, so I look at it. Yeah, I need to take off a little more. It's not perfectly, it kind of goes like that. And I was moving it this way too much. So I'm just gonna go right here. Now, a little smoother. Didn't get all the wood, but that's what I want. I've just taken off tiny bit of wood. Now that looks pretty parallel, Not exactly parallel. This comes out. It's hard to see. But pretty soon your eye, after calibrating for a while, your eye will pick out that the bottom goes a little bit like that. Can you see that? Not much. And that's a matter of pressure on the bottom. I'm going to fix that with the file because we're too close to be using this machine anymore. So, can you see that? It goes out just a little bit. Yeah, and with the file, a couple of strokes and that's gone. You're going to straighten that right up.
Something I've noticed when trying to sand with that is to exaggerate it, you get this effect a lot. With those two, that front part, it just doesn't do it square. It kind of,
Yeah, and so what I would do,
the bottom always sticks out further than the top.
because as you push it down, it tends to go like that. I like to push down, but actually when I push down, I push in a little bit with my thumbnail.
Oh, okay.
Don't use your thumb, use your thumbnail. Why?
Less pressure?
Your thumb is squishy. You push it, you don't know what you're doing. You can't feel that. But if you use your thumbnail,
Calibrate.
if you put a little bit of pressure on your thumbnail, then you know how much pressure that is. Your thumbnail doesn't squish in. So yeah, don't use a spongy material to put pressure on. You try and use something, and I do that a lot with gluing, right? Same thing with gluing. When you're trying to line up this edge,
Oh, the line-up part, yeah.
to line up the part, you can feel. Use your thumb to feel an edge. I can feel a lip. I need to go in. But what I do is I use my thumbnail, and when my thumbnail hits the wood and the plastic and it stops, even though the thumbnail is curved like this, when it stops, it's parallel. And then you can see if there's a lip. And these keys aren't perfect, so it might be lined up here, and there might be a little bit of lip one way or the other in the middle. Don't worry about that. Mm-hmm. This, is more true than the key. And so you're not so much, you're working with the key, but this is what your end result is. So don't lose track of what the job is, You know that was perfectly straight to begin with when it came. Well,
From the factory.
except for these that have that little lip in front. But that little lip does kind of throw you off a little bit. But back here, it's not, except for there's one little tab back there. So trust that.
Mm-hmm.
Trust that that's pretty parallel. Trust that from the factory, this was pretty parallel. Yeah. Now look at this. Right there, you got a little bit of a jagged edge. But it's not so much a big chips. But that's one reason why you need to run your file and break that edge. Now look at the front here. See, this goes up on an angle, straight, and then square. So that's what you're having to reproduce. Whatever this side does, try and figure out how to make it so on the other side. Right? Just do a little bits, and ideally stop just short of where this is. Because the eye's not going to say, well, that's not as deep as that one. No, this one's deeper than that one. There's no right or, it's not like there's a rule. So you stop short of it, and then you haven't overshot it. So easy to go, oh, too much. I'll have to do this one. Oh, too much. Pretty soon both sides are getting too much. So stop short of this one and just call it good. So to make that broken and more radius like that, look at my thumb here. This won't take a lot of skin off of your thumb because it's smooth. But I always stick my thumb up above that, because if you don't, it'll jump up once in a while and you go, and then you just file something you weren't intending to file. Maybe you haven't done it hard enough to make it unrepairable, but just get your thumb up there so that it can't do that.
Yeah, as a guide.
Okay.
Now I've got that kind of radius like this. It's still going out a little bit, so I'll go.
Daddy, did you like those guys?
And it's not perfect, but it goes back in, and so the eye doesn't pick it up anymore so much. Okay? And this has to get radiused.
I want to kill him. Wait, yeah. Oh, no.
I have to get to my appointment.
That looks good.
Oh, we need to end.
That looks good. It looks just shy of that one, and that's what you want. You don't want it to
So,
be more so.
So we're gonna finish up
And we haven't done that bevel,
the
but the
our
bevel,
Facebook
not much
Live.
here, and it is
so
more.
every Wednesday morning.
These are
Come
different
join
kind
us.
of keys.
Check
They
it
do
out
have
if you like piano stuff.
They're not uniform. They progressively more bevels.